I thought I knew what temptation looked like, until she leaned closer and whispered, "Your girlfriend doesn't know me like you do." And in that moment, everything I believed about love, loyalty, and desire shifted. I still remember the first night I noticed her, not just as someone in the room, but as someone different. My girlfriend had dragged me to one of those family gatherings where conversations blur together, everyone laughing too loud, everyone trying to talk over each other. I sat there, smiling when I was supposed to, nodding at stories I'd heard twice already, feeling like a guest in someone else's world. And then there was her. She was in her early 40s, dressed simply but in a way that made her presence impossible to ignore. She wasn't loud. She wasn't trying to stand out. But she carried herself with a kind of quiet grace that made you want to notice her. When she spoke, people leaned in, not because she demanded attention, but because her words had weight. It wasn't until I found myself in the kitchen, pretending to refill my glass just to escape the noise, that she appeared beside me. I hadn't even heard her footsteps. "You look like you've been trying to escape," she said, her voice low, laced with amusement. I laughed, caught off guard. "Is it that obvious?" Her smile was knowing, the kind that said she'd seen 100 gatherings like this and had felt the same. She reached past me to grab a bottle from the counter, her arm brushing mine for the briefest moment. It was nothing, absolutely nothing, and yet, something. We talked. At first, small things, how long the food was taking, how warm the house felt with so many people inside. But then, without even realizing how, the conversation drifted somewhere deeper. She asked about my work, not in the polite, passing way most people did, but with real interest. She wanted to know what it was like, how I felt about it, what I hoped it might lead to. And I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone. Not even my girlfriend. Not because I was hiding anything, but because no one had asked in quite the same way. She didn't just listen. She paid attention. There's a difference between someone hearing your words and someone actually listening to them. With her, every pause I made, every half-finished thought, I could feel her waiting, giving me space to say more. It made me want to keep talking. At one point, she tilted her head and said softly, "You think more deeply than people realize, don't you?" I froze. Not because the words were unusual, but because it felt like she had seen through me in a way no one else bothered to. From the dining room, laughter burst out again, reminding me where I was. But in that small pocket of quiet, just the two of us standing by the counter, it felt like we were somewhere else entirely. I caught myself studying her. The faint lines at the corner of her eyes, the calm steadiness of her presence, the way she didn't rush a single word. She wasn't trying to impress me. She wasn't even trying to be noticed. And maybe that's why I couldn't stop noticing her. That night, I walked back into the noise with a thought I shouldn't have let myself keep. Why did it feel like she saw me better than the person I came here with? The strange thing about connections like this is that they never arrive with fireworks. They slip in quietly, disguised as ordinary moments. You don't even realize how much weight they're carrying until you feel it pressing down on you. Over the next few weeks, I began to notice her more, and not in the way you notice someone's outfit or their smile, but in the way you realize someone remembers you when nobody else does. It started at dinner one night. We were all sitting around the table, the conversation bouncing from one person to another. My girlfriend was teasing me, lighthearted but sharp in front of her relatives, and I tried to laugh it off. But before I could even answer, she cut in. Not harshly, not defensive, just enough to shift the tone. "Don't tease him too much," she said with that calm smile. "He's actually smarter than you give him credit for." The words were simple, but the way she said them, it was like she was defending a truth only she had noticed. Her hand brushed my forearm when she passed me the serving dish, so lightly it could have been accidental. And maybe it was. But the warmth of that touch stayed longer than it should have. After that, I began to catch the small things. She remembered what book I'd mentioned weeks earlier, and she asked me if I'd finished it. She asked about my job again, not in a casual way, but like she'd been waiting to hear the update. And when I spoke, she listened the same way she had in the kitchen that night. Head tilted slightly, eyes steady, like she was letting me exist without having to fight for space. There was another moment, too, one I keep replaying. We were both reaching for the same wineglass at the counter. My fingers touched hers, barely, but enough. I pulled back quickly, muttering an apology. She just smiled, that soft, knowing smile, and said, "Don't worry, I don't mind. It shouldn't have meant anything." But the way my chest tightened told me it did. Later, across the table, I felt her eyes on me. Not constantly, just long enough that when I looked up, she didn't look away right away. The kind of glance that lingered for a heartbeat too long, heavy with something unspoken. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that she was just kind, that maybe she just had a way of making people feel seen. But the truth sat with me, undeniable. It felt different with her. And in the middle of the laughter and chatter, I had this thought I couldn't shake. Maybe she wasn't just noticing me. Maybe she was letting me notice her, too. It was late. The kind of late where the house has finally quieted. The voices have faded, and only the faint hum of the night remains. I slipped outside for air, just to steal a moment away from the warmth and noise. And there she was. She stood on the balcony, wrapped in a shawl, gazing out like the night sky was telling her secrets. For a second, I considered turning back, not wanting to intrude. But before I could, she turned, her eyes catching mine in the dim light. "You couldn't sleep either?" she asked, her voice low, soft enough to blend with the breeze. I stepped closer, leaning against the railing a short distance from her. "Just needed some air," I said. "It gets too loud in there." She smiled faintly, pulling the shawl tighter around her shoulders. "It always does. That's why I end up out here more often than not. Feels honest out here." There was something in the way she said it, like she wasn't just talking about the balcony. We stood there in silence for a while, just listening to the faint hum of crickets, the distant murmur of a television still playing inside. And then, slowly, the conversation drifted. She spoke about her younger years, the things she wished she'd understood back then. Missed chances. The way time had taught her patience, but also left her with a quiet ache for the things she hadn't dared to try. I listened, really listened, and when I spoke, it wasn't rehearsed or polite. It was honest. I told her about the weight of expectations, how being young didn't mean feeling free, how sometimes it felt like everyone was waiting for me to prove myself, to become something, and how exhausting that could be. She tilted her head, studying me with that same attentiveness she always carried. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "You listen, really listen. Do you know how rare that is?" I felt my chest tighten, not from the compliment itself, but from the way she said it, as if she wasn't just acknowledging me, but confessing something about herself. She reached out, almost absent-mindedly, adjusting my collar where it had folded. Her fingers brushed against my neck for the briefest second, but the contact lingered in my skin long after. I didn't move. I didn't want to. Her hand dropped back to her side, and she looked away, as though realizing how close we'd just been. The silence stretched, charged now, heavy with everything unspoken. Inside, laughter spilled faintly through the walls, pulling me back to reality. But out there, on that balcony, reality felt far away. I wanted to say something, anything to break the tension, but my thoughts tangled. And before I could untangle them, she exhaled softly and whispered, "Sometimes, I think people don't really see me anymore. Not like this." I swallowed, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "I see you." And in the hush of that night, those words felt dangerous because they were true. The next evening, the house was quieter. Most of the guests had left, the music had faded, and only a few lights glowed dimly in the living room. I sat on the couch, half watching the muted television, half lost in my own thoughts. And then she walked in. She wasn't dressed up anymore, just a simple sweater, her hair loosely tied back. But maybe that's why I noticed her even more. She looked real, unshielded, and for reasons I didn't want to admit, that version of her undid me more than anything else. She sat down beside me, not too close, not too far, just close enough that I could feel the faint warmth radiating from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, Not uncomfortable but heavy, like the quiet before a storm. Finally, she broke it. "You have a way of making people forget themselves," she said softly, eyes fixed on the floor. I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Her gaze lifted, meeting mine, and in her eyes, I saw it. The conflict, the hesitation, the longing she was trying to contain. She took a slow breath, and then the words came out, deliberate, trembling but certain. "Your girlfriend doesn't know me like you do." The room tilted. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. But the way she was looking at me, steady, vulnerable, waiting, told me I hadn't. The air between us changed instantly. I could hear the faint tick of the clock on the wall, the low hum of the fridge in the kitchen. Every sound felt louder, sharper, because neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed the same way. I didn't know what to say. My chest was tight, my thoughts tangled. All I could manage was silence. Staring at her, searching her face for the meaning behind those words. She lowered her eyes, her fingers tightening around the glass she held. I saw the small tremor in her hand, the subtle rise and fall of her breath. She wasn't playing a game. She wasn't teasing. This wasn't lighthearted. This was confession. My heart pounded. I wanted to say something. Deny it, accept it, anything. But the truth sat so heavy inside me I couldn't move. I realized then that I had been waiting for her to say something like this. And now that she had, I didn't know what to do with it. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Finally, she gave a small, almost broken laugh and whispered, "I shouldn't have said that." But I didn't move away. I didn't laugh it off. I just looked at her, really looked, and thought. She was right. In that moment, I knew something had shifted between us, something I couldn't undo. And though we hadn't touched, hadn't crossed any visible line, the weight of what hung between us was heavier than any embrace. It was desire, yes, but it was more than that. It was recognition. And recognition, once spoken aloud, can't be taken back. The morning after, I told myself I'd keep my distance. Whatever had passed between us last night, those words, that silence, the weight of everything unsaid, it couldn't happen again. It was too close, too dangerous. So I did what seemed safest. I avoided her. At breakfast, I sat at the far end of the table, burying myself in conversation with whoever happened to be nearest. When she spoke, I answered politely, nothing more. I thought if I kept it simple, kept it neutral, the tension might fade back into the shadows where it belonged. But the thing about tension is, it doesn't fade. It sharpens. Every time I caught her eyes, I saw it. That flicker of disappointment when I looked away too quickly. That pause before she answered me, as if she'd been waiting for more. She never said anything, never hinted, but I could feel her presence like a quiet gravity pulling at me. And then there were the small accidents. Passing her in the hallway, shoulders brushing for the briefest second. The way her perfume lingered after she walked by, catching me off guard. Reaching for the same dish at lunch, our fingers nearly touching before I jerked my hand back. Each time, my chest tightened. I told myself it was nothing. Just coincidence. Just my imagination. But deep down I knew I didn't believe that. I tried to convince myself I was being good, being loyal by putting distance between us. But the truth was, every time I pulled away, a part of me ached. I found myself listening for her laugh in the other room, catching myself glancing around corners to see if she was there. It wasn't avoidance. It was longing in disguise. That evening, I stepped outside for another breath of air, thinking I was alone. But when I turned, she was already there, standing by the doorway. We both froze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her eyes searched mine, quiet but piercing, like she already knew the battle I was fighting. I forced a smile, thin and nervous. Didn't mean to interrupt. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to say something. Instead, she just nodded and stepped aside, letting me pass. But as I brushed past her, the faintest touch of her arm against mine sent a shiver through me. It was unbearable, the restraint, the pretending, the silence. I wanted to ask her what she meant that night. I wanted to know if she regretted it, or if she thought of it the way I did. But I didn't. I kept walking, left with the echo of her presence trailing behind me. And the worst part wasn't the distance I'd created. The worst part was realizing I wanted her to break it. Because deep down, I wasn't avoiding her to protect myself. I was avoiding her to protect the truth I wasn't ready to admit. The truth that every moment I stayed away, I wanted nothing more than to go back. It happened on the last evening I was there. Maybe it was inevitable. Maybe silence can only stretch so far before it demands to be broken. I found her in the sitting room, away from everyone else. A lamp cast a soft golden glow across the space, her shadow stretching across the carpet. She was reading, or at least pretending to, but when she looked up and saw me, she didn't close the book right away. She just held my gaze, like she'd been expecting me. For a long moment I didn't move. I almost turned back, almost let the moment pass again. But something in her eyes, tired, searching, waiting, pulled me in. I stepped inside, the floor creaking under my weight, and the air between us tightened. "You've been avoiding me," she said finally, her voice quiet but steady. I hesitated. I thought, maybe that was for the best. She closed the book, setting it gently on the table beside her. Best for who? I had no answer. My throat felt dry. I wanted to say for us, but the word didn't feel true anymore. She rose from the chair, walking slowly toward me. There was no game in her expression, no flirtation, just honesty, raw and unguarded. "You make me feel seen," she whispered. "Do you know how long it's been since someone looked at me and really saw me?" I swallowed, my chest tightening. "You make it sound like no one else notices you. That can't be true." She gave a small, sad smile. "People notice me. They just don't see me. Not the way you do." Her words hung in the air, heavier than anything she'd said before. And I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't hide behind politeness or restraint. "I don't know what this is," I admitted, my voice unsteady. "But I feel it. Every time I'm near you. Every time you look at me like that. It's like I belong in that moment, even when I know I shouldn't." Her breath caught, and for a second, she just stared at me, her eyes shining with something I couldn't name. Then she reached up, her hand trembling slightly as her fingertips brushed my face. The touch was feather-light, barely there, but it sent a rush through me that made the room spin. I didn't move, couldn't. Her hand lingered, then slowly fell away as she whispered, "Maybe it's not about what we should or shouldn't. Maybe it's just about admitting that this connection is real." We stood there in silence, so close that I could hear the rhythm of her breathing, feel the warmth radiating between us. I didn't kiss her. She didn't kiss me. But in that fragile honesty, in those words we had finally spoken aloud, it felt as though we already had. For the first time, the truth wasn't just inside me. It lived between us, and neither of us could take it back. The night of my departure came too quickly. Suitcase by the door, jacket in hand, I tried to steady myself, but there was a restlessness inside me I couldn't calm. Part of me had been waiting for this moment, to leave before the weight of what had grown between us tipped too far. Another part of me, though, dreaded it more than I could admit. She was there when I stepped into the hallway, waiting as if she'd known I couldn't leave without seeing her one last time. No book in her hand now, no distractions. Just her, standing quietly, wrapped in the faint light spilling through the curtains. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I wanted to say something casual, something safe. But when her eyes found mine, the words dissolved. She stepped closer, her arms folding loosely as if to protect herself. "So this is goodbye?" I swallowed. "For now, at least." Her lips curved in a faint smile, but her eyes betrayed her. "You say that like you're trying to convince yourself." I let out a shaky breath. "Maybe I am." Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was thick with all the things we hadn't dared to give voice to. My chest felt tight, as though every unspoken word I carried was pressing against my ribs. And then she did something I hadn't expected. She reached for me. Not abruptly, not impulsively, but with a slow, deliberate tenderness. Her hand rested against the back of my neck, drawing me into an embrace. I closed my eyes, arms wrapping around her as though it was the most natural thing in the world. She was warm, steady, and impossibly close. The hug wasn't rushed. It wasn't polite. It was something else. Something that said more than words could. Her breath brushed my ear as she whispered, "No matter what happens, you'll remember this. And so will I." I wanted to answer, to tell her I already knew she was right. That no matter where I went, no matter what my life looked like after tonight, this connection would haunt me. In the best and most complicated way. But the words stuck in my throat. All I could do was hold her tighter, wishing the moment could stretch longer than time allowed. When we finally pulled back, her hand lingered at my chest for a second, as if reluctant to let go. She smiled, soft and bittersweet. "Go on," she said. "Don't make me regret saying goodbye." I managed a nod, my voice barely above a whisper. "I won't." But as I walked away, suitcase rolling behind me, I knew the truth. Part of me would always stay behind, in that quiet embrace, in the space between what we admitted and what we never dared to. And as the door closed behind me, my final thought echoed her words. My girlfriend cared for me, yes, but she didn't know me like she did. And maybe that would always be the secret I carried with me. If this story touched you, let me know in the comments what you would have done in his place. Would you walk away or stay? And if you'd like to hear more slow burn age gap romances like this one, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Your support helps bring these moments to life.